Mr. President, I rise today to speak about what people all across the country are talking about, and that's the high price of energy, what people are paying at the pump. I just returned from a week in Alaska. It's fair to say that in a state like ours that is as rich as we are with energy wealth, we're being killed by energy right now when it comes to prices. And so I wanted to comment on some of the statements that the President made over the weekend and in Friday when he spoke about energy to the country. And I have to tell you, I was pleased to hear the President say that he is joining us in an all-of-the-above approach to energy. I think that's good news. It's certainly something that I have been saying ever since I arrived here in the Senate. It is about domestic production, it is about efficiencies and conservation, and it's about renewables. So that's good. That's good. We heard the President say that we need to be doing more with oil and gas. You're not going to find any disagreement with me. Wind and solar, nuclear, biofuels, efficiencies, this is all good. But the problem that we're seeing, Mr. President, is the words coming from President Obama are not matching the actions when it comes to what we can be doing with our own domestic production in this country. And I'll speak specifically to oil and gas. The actions coming out of the administration, whether through this budget or through some of the other proposals, pushing for higher taxes, higher royalties on the industry. When we think about what goes on with the oil and gas leases in the Gulf, we have certainly seen the impacts, the slowdown there. Up in Alaska, we have been pushing aggressively for 4 years now to get the OCS leases advanced to exploration with Shell. Not only 4 years in the process, but billions of dollars into a process. We're getting closer, but we are not there yet. With the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, an area that has been designated by the Congress to explore for production activity. Took almost 2 years to get a bridge across to CD5, an area where we have an opportunity to continue our exploration, but 2 years to get a simple permit for a bridge. We all know that ANWR has been locked up for decades now. Incredibly wealthy potential there. Look at the decision on the Keystone XL pipeline coming out of this administration. When it comes to other areas that are supposedly in all the above, nuclear, as much as we might have hoped that this was enjoying a renaissance, we've seen the decision on the shutdown of Yucca Mountain from this administration, the issues as they relate to access to uranium in certain parts of the country. The rhetoric is not necessarily matching what we're seeing coming out of the administration. And this is what is so disturbing to a person like me who comes from an area where we have so much to give, so much to offer. Now, the President, in his words, said, there are no quick fixes to this problem. And I agree. I absolutely agree. And that's why, instead of focusing on what could be perceived a quick fix, like releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, we need to be focusing on the long-term solutions. I keep going back to 1995 when the House and the Senate passed ANWR. It was vetoed by the President shortly thereafter. Prices at the pump back then were $1.07 at the pump. The average price today is $3.65. Think about where we would be, Mr. President, if that action had not been vetoed. If the Alaska pipeline, which is now less than half filled, were at full capacity, with oil coming out of ANWR. Mr. President, a colleague of ours from New York just yesterday sent a letter to Secretary Clinton asking her to pressure Saudi Arabia to pump more oil. And in his letter to the Secretary, he says, I urge the State Department to work with the government of Saudi Arabia to increase its oil production as they are currently producing well under their capacity. Well, our pipeline, Mr. President, is certainly well under capacity at 600,000 barrels a day. When we were pushing it through at full tilt, we were over 2 million barrels a day. That's exactly what the senator from New York has asked Saudi Arabia to step up to do. We could be doing it from Alaska. We could be doing it from this country with our people gaining access to our resource, and we're not doing that. Now, the president says that the Republican plan is just to drill, 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 and he says we hear this every year. Well, why do we hear this every year? Because it is part of the solution. It's not the whole solution, but it is part of the solution, in addition to conservation, efficiency, renewables, and other areas of our domestic production. But drilling, Mr. President, is part of the solution. It shouldn't just be part of the rhetoric here. The president says, and I would agree, the American people are not stupid on this. They know that we're not just going to be able to snap our fingers and have oil coming out of ANWR or having oil coming out of the OCS in the Chukchi or the Beaufort. They know that it takes a while. They know that in some cases it might take decades to come. So why, Mr. President, would we not start now? If we had started in 1995, think about where we would have been. He says there are no short-term silver bullets. Once again, I agree. But there is a long silver bullet in Alaska, and that's our Trans-Alaska Pipeline that has been producing oil or moving oil for 30 years now for this country. That silver bullet could be filled up, and it would be helping this country, just as we're asking for help from Saudi Arabia. Now, the statement that I think most upset me this weekend was a statement that the president made when he said some politicians see this being higher oil prices, as a political opportunity. And he repeated a quote that Republicans are licking their chops and stated, "Only in politics do people root for bad news." Well, Mr. President, the people of my state are not rooting for bad news when it comes to higher energy prices. And I will tell you, I'm a little offended by the president's statement. I would invite him to come to Alaska, spend a week with me, go to where I was last Saturday, up in Fairbanks, where people are paying $4.29 for their home heating fuel. My sister pays over $1,000 a month for home heating fuel to fill her tanks. She lives within 20 minutes of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. You can see it, you can drive by it, this line that is half full. And it's not, again, it's not because we're running out of resources, it's because we've been locked out of ANWR, we've been delayed on NPRA, OCS we're still waiting on. There's certainly plenty of leases out there, but it's getting the permits out of this administration that has been holding us back from doing more to help the people of Alaska and to help the people of this country. Last month, I was out in Bethel in Southwest Alaska. There was a native elder who came to a little gathering that we had. He's from Eek, Alaska, and he was telling me that he pays $7.46 for home heating fuel in the village of Eek. That's how you stay warm. When I was there in January, the average temperature for that month was about 20 degrees below zero. He says that he has to buy his fuel 10 gallons at a time because that's all that he can afford. And then when he doesn't have any more money, he goes out looking for firewood for he and his wife. This gentleman, as I said, is an elder, probably 70 years old, but this is how he is living. This high energy prices for him are not an opportunity. Go up to Nome. All eyes of the nation were on Nome several weeks back when the Coast Guard cutter was escorting the Russian fuel tanker, the Renda, to get to Nome to provide fuel for the community of Nome and the surrounding villages because the winter ice had come in and the winter barge had not been able to make it in with the fuel. When I was in Nome that afternoon, the prices for gas at the pump were $5.43. Price for diesel was $5.99. But it was projected if the Renda didn't get through, if they weren't able to fill up their tanks, they would see the prices go up to over $9 a gallon. Think of what that does to just your ability to live. Thankfully, thankfully, the Coast Guard and the fine men and women were able to see that that community and the villages were taken care of. I was in Yakutat on Wednesday, a small community that is not accessible by road, as most of our communities aren't. But there in Yakutat, they're paying 54 cents a kilowatt hour for their energy. Most of their power is diesel-generated power. 54 cents. That is for the businesses, the homes actually get a subsidy from the state of Alaska of 30 cents a kilowatt hour. But the small grocery store that we went to visit paid $10,000 for their energy prices in January alone. $10,000 a month for a small little grocery store. They're paying $5.19 a gallon right now, but it's going up with the next fuel barge that comes in. Alaskans in villages that rely on diesel for their power can pay between 40 and 45% of their income for their energy costs. Compare that to the rest of the country, where you're looking at somewhere between 3 and 6% of your income going towards energy. We're paying almost 50% in some of our villages. So, Mr. President, I don't view high oil prices as a political opportunity, and neither do my constituents. What we view as an opportunity is the resource that our state holds, but resource that we continue to be denied access to that opportunity. We just learned just late last week, the USGS has come back with an estimate that the shale oil in Alaska will come close to 2 billion barrels of oil. ANWR's mean estimate is about 10.6 billion barrels of oil. OCS, we anticipate over 26 billion barrels of oil. Mr. President, we have the resources. We have the ability to access the resources and do so in an environmentally safe way. This needs to be part of all of the above solution, in addition to everything that we do with renewables, in addition to our efficiencies and our conservation. But we must be doing more domestically. Alaska holds the opportunity, but again, I would agree with the President. There is no short-term fix for this. But if we don't get started today, there is not going to be a tomorrow for communities like Yakutat and Eek and Bethel and Fairbanks. We've got to get started today, Mr. President. I thank you, and I yield the floor.